this computer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Vibe Check, the I don't know what you call it, podcast slash community call from Happy Operators and the AI and the Rest community. Today we have on Pietro, who is a friend of ours in Barcelona, and very skilled in the art of GTM growth, especially harnessing the power of AI. So, Pietro, please say hello and introduce yourself a little bit about who you are and how you've ended up on this call, let's say, and then we'll dive straight in and work out how you can help us as a community of builders, um, marketers, everything in between. But we're definitely trying to understand how to use AI in this world that we're living in. So, take it away, Pietro, please.
Thank you, Matt. I'm really glad to be here. You know, I talk a lot, so if I talk too much, stop me at any time. Anybody can interrupt me. Please, absolutely do it. I'll do a really quick introduction about myself. I come from a venture capital background, and 2 years ago, I decided to go all in on AI. I created an AI agency to develop custom solution for mid-market companies with a co-founder, technical co-founder. We did that for 2 years, and eventually, along the way, I started creating content mostly for lead generation, focus specifically on LinkedIn, and that worked really, really well. I did a lot of educational content, and it worked so well. At one point, it was generating more revenue than the agency itself with much better profit margins, all of these educational parts. So I started going all in on the education part, and now I basically run an education company that does courses, online courses for professionals, mostly based on Maven, which is a training platform. And custom coaching for companies. So that's my entire focus. If I had to split my actual day to day and what I do in the day to day, it's still mostly educating myself, learning things myself, and explaining them to other people through content. So that's my really day to day. And then a minority part, I actually run session and courses.
Amazing. Well, just before the call, you did mention that you had a bit of a mishap. So, why don't
Yeah.
we, and what's the lesson there? Explain that, and then we'll kind of dive in, I suppose, or I'm hoping, into Claude and Claude skills.
I like to start from my misfortune. Basically, I smashed my MacBook where I have basically everything saved, right? And normally, up until let's say even 4 months ago, I would say, who cares, right? Because I had everything in the drive. But then 4 months ago, Claude decided to release CoWork. And as most of you may know, coworks work locally, right? Which means coworks can access your desktop and save things on your desktop. So everything you do through CoWork is saved on your desktop by default, right? Which means everything I had saved on my local folder is not completely lost. There's still a small chance that I will recover most of it, but a large part of at least the work of the last 2 months might have vanished, which is a bummer, but still a good learning to as of why it's important to back everything up, whether you work in a drive or not, and find way around working with Cowork.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone else in the community does it. I'm still trying to work out exactly where to store things, but I do have my my Google Drive like on my Mac, and same
Local,
with
yeah.
Apple um Cloud, let's call it. But then trying to get those the files to be shared with OpenClaw and these other agents, I've not found the right way. So I'm sure you're not the only one who's fallen afoul of
No,
the.
and to be honest, I don't think like I've like talked about this with a lot of other creators and let's say experts or people who live this in the day to day. I have yet to find a setup to say, okay, this is really worse. I think even the Anthropic team themselves, they see how people use things and then they develop in that direction. But now we're still in that phase where they're checking how people use things, right? And it's always developer work in one way, right? And everything is optimized at the beginning for developers. The rest of the people, mostly, like I didn't say it in my introduction, but I'm non-technical and everything I do, all of the training, all of what I take care of, is basically for non-technical people, right? So for non-technical people, everything happens after, right? Claude bets by design on developers, just like any other LLM environment, because those are the first one that can that they are early adopters and they are also where they can where basically where you see where the future is you look at developers, right? Because by empowering their own developers, they get the largest edge on the market. So that's where they develop first. When something works for developer, like Claude Code, for example, they bring it to non-technical people, and this would be CoWork, right? But first they figure things in Claude Code, they push out things in Claude Code. What works then comes to Claude CoWork, right? By design, non-technical people don't use it in the same way, right? So I think there's still some catch up to do, and it will always happen after everything that happens for technical people.
Well, to be fair, I wonder. I do think probably give it 6 months. And the developer type tasks. I mean, they're already more or less abstracted away now, but you know, co-work, knowledge work might actually be the primary use case, as much as because you won't know if you're writing code or not. You're just trying to get jobs done, in the sense. Um, there's a bit of a harness around co-work compared to code, which is annoying when you're used to code. But at the end of the day, where's the mass market? It's probably be co-work, no? Over like shipping apps. I don't know.
So for them, economically, the big money are in developers, right? Because those are the one who use the API and the one that spends real money, right? So for them, that's a primary line in their balance sheet, as I understand. So I think that would be always their main focus. Whether developers want to have a more friendly interface, I'm not fit to give that opinion, but personally, my opinion is no, right?
Mm.
Cloud Code will remain their key product. The rest of the market is still gigantic, right? So I still they will still go very 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 aggressive in it, and they will do huge enormous updates and improve in the user experience of it. But I still think the main focus is gonna be on developers and people want to build a more complex stuff, and the interface for that will remain, at least in the foreseeable future. Let's say in the next 6 to 12 months, it will remain code.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Right. So why don't we do this? With just a quick, I don't know, emoji in Zoom if you want. Who's not used Claude CoWork before? Whoever's on the call. Um, or just put some chats in. Basically, I want Pietro to jump in if possible, share your screen. Um,
Hmm.
to set basically explain. In fact, also when you jump into co-work, just to kind of explain, you're quite new. I remember we like a few months back, you were like, "Oh, Claude probably should kind of understand it properly." I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, mate, you definitely should." Because you came from Relay on Google Gemini, and so that maybe explain how you've ended up in Claude CoWork and the real kind of unlock there, and then yeah, maybe jump into how you connect that to LinkedIn. Maybe do a two or three. I know you shared one of
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
Maven kind of syllabus things. So maybe do two or three of those LinkedIn use cases because they were really interesting, from my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So how I landed on Cloud, I mean, the largest unlock was the release of Opus 4.6. It was, I think, January or late December was the latest model released back then, and it was really a significant upgrade. Even if you tried it for an afternoon, you would realize how so much better it was compared to basically anything else that was there in the market. Gemini was really good. It seemed to be really good up until the end of 2025. And then with the release of the new models and the new interfaces, because they released Opus 4.6 the same month they released Claude CoWork, which in the end, it's crazy to think it was 4 months ago, maybe four and a half ago, right? It seems like ages have passed, but in the end, it's like 4 months. And with that release, I remember I gave it a try. We had a company account, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is just so incredible! I'm just gonna go all in for the foreseeable future here." And I started really diving much, much deeper. And the other large change that happened at the same time with the release of Cowork is uh, it basically switched from um, a chatbot interface for non-technical people where the value is in the conversation that you have with the chat. You ask a question, it answer, and it helps you brainstorm, go deeper into knowledge, help you take decision. But the value is in the conversation, the back and forth with the AI, and it switched to the value being in the task it performs, right? So it stops being a chatbot and it becomes an agent, right? You don't metric the performance as on, okay, what kind of response you give me. You measure the performances, what's the end result it creates, be it a document, a PDF, a presentation, being changing something in your Notion on whatever other tool you have connected. So the value shifted from being in the conversation to being in the output, right? And which is the real unlock here, right? Before it was just like, okay, helping me be smarter virtually. Now it helps me really be more productive, right? And what before was only achievable through a workflow tool, be it an A10 Relay or any other tool, it's now also in part with a different interface and with different modality available in Claude directly in your Claude CoWork, which is uh, I think the largest unlock that happened this year, especially for non-technical people. Virtually, you could do all of this before as a developer, but now all of this is just available to everyone with a relatively simple interface and simple instruction. You can achieve something really cool, right? So for me, for example, at the beginning, I told you at the beginning I mostly focus on content, so the largest value unlock was to apply those feature into for example my content creations activities, be it my newsletter, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of the channels I have.
Well, Nuno raises a fair point, which is about how to. Are you still using Relay, for example? And to what are there some cases where you still would use it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for non-technical folks, there are only two type of interface that make sense. You should pick one LLM environment, one reasoning copilot, be it Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude. Everybody has their preference. Like if I had to recommend now today, as of May 2026, I would say definitely Claude, where you have both a chatbot and a copilot, an agent that helps you, but you still have to direct it in the sense that you're still in control and it helps you achieve the task faster. But you still are in direction. You only have a primer of what a scheduled task is, but it's very limited. It's not reliable, right? So you don't have what is normally called triggers, so alarm that makes the agent, the AI, wake up independently and perform task, right? To achieve something more reliable and more repeated that needs to happen regardless whether you're there or not, you still need a workflow tool, right? For example, I don't know, whenever I receive an email that has an invoice contained, append the invoice into I don't know, a Google Sheet or put it into a folder. Or whenever someone posts something on YouTube, go take the transcript, send me a summary, etc., etc. Anything that needs to happen based on a specific trigger needs to happen reliably. Okay, for those use cases, still workflow are the best possible solution. The other important variable is the control you have over the process. If you work in Claude, even with skills or without skills, you give an instruction that depends on a prompt how good you are at explaining, and then the AI agent figures out how to do the task, right? It will do a lot of assumption. At times it will ask you additional things, but it will still be the agents that drive forward. In a workflow, you set the steps, right? So you have much more control over what the output is. So it still makes sense for a lot of tasks, especially also when you need the full audit trail of everything that happens, and you need to be able to, say, okay, this part where you use AI, it worked really well. This other part in the end, it's where, something messed up and it didn't work well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that makes sense. So definitely the big one is like webhooks or the alarm as you called it. Maybe I'm sure Claude at some point will just give you the ability to trigger it from a webhook, but for
Sure. I
now
mean, it's a
maybe
question of
that's
time,
enough.
right? I think eventually when that happens, the differential will be uh, how structured you want
Mm.
the process to be. I think for businesses, there's still going to be a lot of value in having very structured and auditable and clear steps. Additionally, by having a structured approach, a more workflow approach, you will also have much more control over the spending, right? With Claude, you don't have that, right? Every task, even if you do the very same task, it could take a spin, like a connector, a single connector, a single call to a connector might cost thousands of credits, and in large organization, it really makes a difference, right? With workflow, you really don't have that issue because you have everything pre-structured and prefixed, and it's also much more defined, so consume by design much less context and much less credit.
Yeah, yeah. No, fair points actually. Fair points. All right. Look, I want to see peek behind the curtain. Are you able to share your screen at the moment or not?
Yeah,
Based on the smashed up computer. So, let's say I'm trying to I've not done my LinkedIn before and I want to
yeah.
start. Where do I start? And especially where do I start when it comes to Claude? I suppose Claude CoWork, I suppose.
Yeah, so if you haven't started your LinkedIn, you yet have to start, you should start on LinkedIn, right? You shouldn't touch Claude because you would have no idea how to instruct it. Before instructing AI how to do a task, I bet this is my view over everything. You should learn how to do it yourself. So do a month of LinkedIn by yourself. It will be terrible and you'll hate it to the core, but eventually you'll figure out all of the important things or most of the important things. Once you have figured those out, your style, who you are, what you post about, you can start using CoWork to amplify and be more productive, more effective, and better. In general, the best, like the coolest unlock for me and the largest single value item, especially for non-technical people, is using skills. Right? A skill is um, a set of instruction which you teach Claude. And the difference between I don't use a skill or I use a skill is if you don't use a skill, Claude come up with generic context, so it's context not personalized for you. If you use a skill, you basically obtain a professional output in whatever means a professional for you, right? For example, how I do a presentation, how Matt do a presentation, how Chloe will do a presentation is different, right? So how I teach Claude that he has to do my presentation will be different and a different skill, and what Claude will return to me will make me happy, but wouldn't make Matt happy, wouldn't make Louis happy, wouldn't make Chloe happy. Right, so you teach Claude how to do a specific task which you like, right? This is the single largest value unlock. And the second one is, as we said before, CoWork. What does CoWork in practice mean? Like what does CoWork add on top of a normal chat? So if I switch to chat to CoWork, I will have basically, to simplify, there's much more, but to simplify, you will have two things. Number one, access to your files. Okay, so you'll be able to save and read file from your computer. And number two, it will be able to browse on your behalf. It will be able to open an instance of your browser, say Google Chrome, and browse on your behalf. Okay, so you'll be able to open your LinkedIn as if it was you. Right? Normally, AI can't access LinkedIn because LinkedIn is requires an account to access the content which is on LinkedIn. If you use Claude CoWork, you will be able to open LinkedIn as if it was you. Okay, you can open LinkedIn as me and browse as if it was a normal person. Okay, so what I thought of doing is showing a bunch of things which I do using CoWork, right? I'm not gonna focus too much, and then if you guys have questions or want to see more, I'm happy to show you more about each single one. Okay,
Yeah,
for example,
so
starting,
as
yeah,
he moves, just yeah, someone's already done it. Marco has done it. Just put your hand up and then I'll try and kind of or even you, Pietro, just like stop
yeah.
if it makes sense.
Well, why don't you ask a question, Marco?
Yeah. By the way, we went to the same university, Pietro. Funny enough. But that being said, anything that CoWork is able to say, Cloud Code should. Sorry, anything that CoWork is capable of doing, Cloud Code should also be capable of doing, right? So
Absolutely.
this thing about using a browser, I can do the same with the extension and the Cloud Code, right?
Correct. Everything you can do
Yeah.
with CoWork, you can do with code. Okay?
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do with the code. As a matter of fact, with Claude Code, you can literally do anything. Okay? What Claude CoWork does is a version of Claude Code much easier to use for non-technical people, right? So it puts together a feature that it would be relatively more complex to create in Claude Code and which you need to create in Claude Code. It makes it easy to access for non-technical people, right? That's exactly what Claude CoWork is. As a matter of fact, when they released, they said Claude Code for the rest of the people, right? It's literally the tagline of Claude CoWork.
Okay. Yeah. Clear.
Perfect. So let me show you a bunch of things which I do, just to give you an example of how I use these things, right? So we said that when you create a skill, you basically put a set of instructions and you give them to Claude and you tell him this is how you do this task. Okay. Then whenever you do that task, you should just um, tell Claude, okay, run this skill, or he will understand it from the context. In this case, what I want to show you, for example, is um, uh, like what I use to create hooks for LinkedIn. Okay, whenever you create content, it's made of like body of text plus the hook. The hook is just the first two lines. It's called hook because it hooks people, it attracts the attention of people, and they usually want to see more if you do a good hook, right? So virtually is the most important part of any piece of content which you create, regardless of what platform you create it on. Okay, so if I go to customize, which is where you find skills, and I go skills, I see all of my skills. Here I will have what is called LinkedIn hook generator. LinkedIn hook generator is composed of a skill MD file. It's just a markdown file, a file in a very specific format called markdown. You guys probably already know this. That has all of the instruction which I want him to have to create hooks. These include example of what I like, what I don't like, example of three of my most successful hook, which I want to rephrase, and instruction of what my voice is. And this is trained based on what has worked for me well in the past, right? So it's a simple file of text. It should be definitely under 500 lines. This one, for example, is less than 60 lines, and it instructs how I like to create a hook. Okay. It also tells him, generally, when I want to create a hook, I already come with a very strong post idea. Usually, I have a draft of a post. Otherwise, it needs to ask me for information of what I want to post about. Okay. So if I go to this chat where I run this specific skill, I run LinkedIn hook. It by design it asks me to paste a bunch of things. Okay. In this case, I already had it's just an input form which I instruct him to ask. In this case, I already had the draft of the post, so I told him, okay, just work with this draft. I pasted here the draft of the post which I wanted. And then I asked him, whenever you create it, I want 10 options. Okay. You have to give me 10 options. I don't want one hook and I'm going to use that. Give me 10 options based on the skill. Based on those 10 options, I will tell you which one I prefer. And when I tell him which one I prefer, he'll create three variations from that one. Okay. So I can have a better idea. This helps me drive to the process of ideating a good hook. At times I already have an idea. I will also give them an idea and it helps me just see different angles to it. Okay. So this is a great way on how to create hook, but you can use the very same structure, a very similar structure also to create the body of the content, right? For me, I prefer to create the body myself and work more with AI on the hook, but it depends on your process. Another really
Marco
cool,
has a little question again. Sorry, Marco.
yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, so I had lost the Zoom window. How do you go about managing the skills you have in your Claude instance? I read that many people like creating their own skills. I'm one of those, but
Yeah,
then there are some fields for which I not an expert. An example can be design. And like my
yeah.
shortcut to choosing the best skill for that topic is I literally try to find a skill that is based on a book that has great reviews and has been endorsed by people I admire. And that's like my thinking process. How do you go about choosing skills for things that you're not an expert about?
That's such a fantastic way to pick skills. I think it's very smart what you do, right? And what I do is not dissimilar in the sense. Generally, I only use skills which I create. Okay. There are some specific instances in which I like to find other options, which I will anyway want to customize. And it's very similar to what you were saying, especially when I want to work with an external tool. Say, for example, I want to use Excalibur to create visual, or I want to use Canva. Okay, many people work in Canva and they have created best practices on how to tell Canva how to work, right? Yet that skill that tells Canva how to work and that tells how you like to design will still need to understand who you are, what your brand is, what you really don't like, right? Which is gonna be different from the person who created it, right? So I think when I work with an external tool, I like to find references of people who have already built with that external tool, and you go to any skill repository. I mean, there are thousands out there, and you just look for someone who has either a lot of stars or you find a way to metric a review, just like you said, you go from a book which has a lot of reviews. In
Mhm.
general, the best way to create a skill is to do a task successfully yourself. Okay, so say you want to create a hook, you create a hook
Mhm.
successfully. Once you have finished the task, then collaboratively, you tell based on this conversation, create a skill. So next time I do this process, it's easier. Same thing if you compare it to, I don't know, doing my monthly reconciliation of invoices, I will do it myself with Claude once. Once I finish, I will tell him create a skill based on this, which is my exact process. And so we do it more next month.
Nice. All right,
Yeah,
keep
makes
moving.
sense.
We've got
Thank you.
um we've got 15 minutes and I want to get as much LinkedIn Claude CoWork knowledge out of your brain as fast as possible.
Second thing I wanted to show you is, okay, this one. So in this case, and this is using CoWork ability to browse on your behalf. I'm asking LinkedIn to run what is called analysis skill. Very similar analysis. This will only work. This skill will only work if you use it in CoWork, right? So if you try to use these skills in Cloud Chat, it won't work. If I use it in CoWork, it will spin up a version of my browser. It will browse as if it was me on my own LinkedIn, for which I included my URL in the skill, and I tell him. I want him to ask me, okay, which week do you want to analyze? In this case, I responded this week so far, Monday to Friday. Whose profile should I pull from? And in this case, I told him by default myself, or you can specify another person. Once I click continue, it tells me these are the answer. It records as a response, and then what it does, it basically it loads the tools. Okay, it checks my profile. It asks me in this case which browser do they want me to use. This is just because I had a new computer because I destroyed the other one. Normally, it would automatically know which browser you go. Once I tell him that, he used Claude Chrome, and you can see it does 14 actions. Regardless, you won't watch this, but he opens, he checks, he takes screenshot of everything, understands everything based on the picture. Once everything is done, he basically return me a response, which is a report over how it performed. Total impression, total comment, total reaction, average impression, total save, total sends, profile views. All of these are instructed. You can have something much more extensive or much leaner, right? But it creates a nice one-off dashboard that gives me wow, last week was really a terrible week. I only had a post with 10,000 impressions. But in general, it does a good job of giving me a snapshot, right? If you wanted to run these on a schedule trigger, you could also do it. So you would come here, you would create a new schedule task, and you would tell me run the LinkedIn analysis skill every Monday at X a.m. And it will go and do this on a recurring basis. And one thing I want to show you additionally, I do the very same on Substack. Okay, on Substack, for me, Substack is more important. It's my newsletter. On Substack, I want to do additional things. I also want to have an Excel sheet with the performance of every newsletter I've ever created. So I will ask CoWork to browse to my Substack. Once it's in my Substack, pull all of the information about all of the latest posts and update it into an Excel file, which is saved in the same folder I work with CoWork. So I can have a snapshot, updated snapshot that updates every week of all of the latest newsletter, right? This one is the last I sent. It had, at this point, 28% open rate. This week, since I ran this one day after I sent the email, this week we will update and will give me the email go to 50% open rate, right? So you will have a continuously update snapshot of everything that happens, and it will also tell me what worked and what didn't. In this case, for this one, I also created what is called a live artifact, which is basically a dashboard that lives inside Claude that updates every week, that lives here. Like if you go to live artifacts, you will see here, right? So I can see Substack monthly review, the last 30 days, 14,000 impression, engagement rate, open rate, free sub gained, etc. This is wrong. But anyway, it gives me a good snapshot visually of what's happening with my Substack. I have one more thing to ask, but I'll stop a second for question to show, but I'll stop a second for questions.
Well, I had a question, but I mean, okay, I'll just ask it now. It was more about, have you found when you use the Chrome tool or the browser element from CoWork, is there some things it can't do? Like in the sense, could you get it to like write your Substack article or publish it? Because I know Substack's not really got an
Yeah,
API. Like, is there
yeah.
something to like definitely don't try to do this? It's crap versus
No, you
this.
can. I mean, you can. Listen, you can do everything. You can do anything you could do, right? Unless a site is like Reddit, for example, blocks it. So on Reddit, you can't use CoWork. Okay, but if it doesn't, you can do anything. Be it writing, be it sending, anything you would be able to do. CoWork can do by itself.
Oh, that's interesting. I suppose that's also a case for Relay, in the sense, Relay is very well connected to the social
In
APIs, and so
general, think it this way, right? There are level of connection which Claude has. First level is native connector. For example, browsing is a native connection. Then there are connector promoted by Anthropic, anything you find in the Anthropic connector library. Then there are connectors which are not in the Anthropic library, which you have to find yourself and install yourself. Slightly more complex, but still a good solution because someone has optimized it. Then there is browsing. Okay, when no connector is available, you can use browsing. If browsing is not available, you can use computer control, which is Claude taking control not only of your browser, but your full computer. Top to bottom is cheapest and most efficient, most expensive, less efficient. More time, more credits, everything, right? So whenever something above is available, you should do it. When nothing is available, for example, when only browsing is the option, probably there are other solutions optimized, more optimized with that connection. For example, Relay has a great connection with LinkedIn. Much better to use Relay on LinkedIn than this, unless for very specific tasks.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Oh, keep going. Unless there's any, I don't see any questions, so keep sharing the
Last thing
thought.
I wanted to show you, well, this is a very simple one. It's not even a skill, it's just a prompt which you can try, and I will paste it in the chat if you guys want to see like how I did it. But basically, this is just if you're at the first, like you're just getting started testing CoWork. This is, ask him to review your LinkedIn profile based on whatever your role and your goal is. Okay, this is what I told him for myself. I told him I'm an AI educator. I want to optimize for people booking calls with me. Let me know what I could improve. And you could even give him a reference profile of other people which you like, compare it with this other person, and tell him, okay, you're a LinkedIn coach and whatever. Right. So it's a simple prompt. Yeah, give him my URL. It uses Chrome's, go there, check all of my profile, and then it gives me a very personalized description of how I could be better. Right. Which, by the way, does a really good job, right? It's just like a friendly person that comes in and tells you, okay, you're doing good, your picture is great, but you have too many call to actions, which I, by the way, definitely have too many call to action on my profile, right? But it does a good job, even if it's something obvious, it's just like a friendly, friendly voice that tells you, okay, man, you should really fix these things. So it's great first attempt to use in cover. Maybe you should have started with this.
No, I mean that's a great use case, and I think we could all have our LinkedIn page roasted.
It's
For
basically a
sure.
coach, you would do the very same thing if you're well instructed as any coach, LinkedIn coach would do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, here's another question. Dispatch. Do
Yeah.
you use Dispatch?
It- Dispatch is fundamentally a way of accessing Claude CoWork from your phone. Okay. So, for example, if I wanted to activate any skill that requires CoWork, like this one or any of the one which we have showed, I could do it from my phone. Okay. Honestly, the cases in which you need that are so incredibly low, okay? In the sense that unless you have a huge ecosystem of skills, and these skills take hours and hours, and it makes a difference if you activate in an hour, in an hour, uh, it doesn't make so much sense, right? Um,
That was
with
my, I mean, my experience is
remote
only,
control.
it's not, I'm just not quite sure how it's finding the right chat. Like if I'm trying to work on something that I'm already working on, it sometimes gets lost, like which chat I'm referring to, and I can't, you don't have any visibility. So I was not a big fan. I don't know if anyone else has tried
No,
Dispatch.
I think it doesn't. It's not meeting adoption. I think they will either retire him or reiterate with a new product version of the same, which is gonna be eventually more agentic, more in the version of OpenClaw and
Well,
similar.
yeah.
But for now, I don't think many people are using it, especially not in a business context. It's nice to give like little demos and activate things from your phone if you're away. It's basically a remote control, nothing more than that.
Yeah, totally. Um, Anyone else, any questions? I've still got a few more, but all right. So how do you think about ideas for content? So you've talked about hooks.
Mm.
What does that look like, especially with AI? And is it something that CoWork does? Does that bit? I think everyone struggles with like, what am I gonna post?
Yeah. No, for me, that's not an issue in the sense that I have, if anything, too many things I want to post about eventually, just finding the time to develop a concept. My key posting is educational, right? So I follow what a larger developer release. Okay, so that's basically what I do, right? There's a new large release. I know I will have to make a guide about it and a couple of posts about it and eventually a live session about it, right? So I put everything in line and then I do it. And that's the core of my content, I would say, brings, I don't know, 90% of everything I do. And then the remaining 10%, I usually post some bullshit or some funny stuff, and it's just like people, DMing me weird things, and I make a post about it, or people insulting my accents on YouTube. It's a great occasion for making posts, right? That just happen. It's just things that happens. It's my birthday, I just post things that happens in my day-to-day life.
Well, I mean, I think you should double down on your Italian and just, lean into it, and
No,
just like,
man, at times I wish people weren't to insult me more. I mean, it's just like those are the easiest impression. Rage bait is just the easiest impression that I ever make on social media, and it's incredible.
well, I mean, you're like, well, it gets more engagement, so I don't care.
It does.
Um,
It does. I mean, it doesn't break any business, but whatever.
true, fair point. But so,
Can I ask,
uh,
can I
sorry,
ask how
Chloe.
you're managing your usage? So do you ever hit max tokens to
Poorly. I manage it poorly. I'm on 20x, and to be fair, not being a developer, not doing anything which requires hours and hours, I've never reached it. I just want to have it in case. But I want to be able to spend as much as possible. At time I try to optimize, but reality is with the 20x account, as a non-technical person, you very rarely hit your limits.
Yeah, it's
Otherwise, if you are on 5x or the pro account, you really have to be careful in the sense that you might get blocked mid workflow, which is something really, really painful. So you have to, try and use as little context as possible. You would go to your setting and turn off memory, for example, turn off anything which is additional. Try and work as much as possible in chat as opposed to CoWork. Only really use CoWork when you need any of the feature of CoWork, right? Because chat consume much less context, and try to reduce as much as possible inputs. Every time you send a message, the AI reads everything that was previously in the conversation. So instead of sending two messages, for example, I always do it because it's also how I type and everything. I send a message, it's like, oh, I'm gonna send another message, and I want to send another one. Every time you send a message, it reads everything which is before that, right? So it consume all of the token you previously consumed plus X. Okay, every time you do it, right? So putting everything into a message, not being very specific in the prompting instead of being vague, it will help you save most of the credit, right? There are plenty of optimization techniques. Personally, my own take, if you were asking for that, is just like I use it so much and it makes so much sense for me that I'm happy to pay $180 per month.
well, yeah, I mean, I get that scenario in the sense if certainly if someone else is paying, if someone's paying me to do work, then I'll just see it as like an expense.
Yeah, exactly.
If I don't have a client, it's a little bit more annoying. I did see actually there's like an open source version of CoWork. That you
Avoid
can,
that.
yeah,
Avoid that as much as possible.
yeah, but I'm a tinkerer. I'm a tinkerer.
Yeah, no,
I
I know,
just
I know you
hours
will.
on.
I was saying for everybody else, refrain from following Matt advice on trying a local version of cloth. But I know you will, Matt.
Um, okay, Louis. Um, okay, that's not the simplest of questions, but I'll see if you can answer it. So, how do you structure the handoff between a technical? This might not be Pietro's ballpark, by the way, Louis, but we'll try. How do you structure? Can you read that question?
Yeah, I'm reading it between technical
Um,
agent and
on a
simplicity.
high level, basically, how do you hand off, say, one task to another agent without losing context? I suppose that's really what you're asking, rather than quite being quite specific, because Pietro is not a developer.
Well,
Um,
yeah,
or not
honestly.
necessarily. He's not a technical in that respect. But if you want to kind of if I've got the question right, or am I wrong?
So, like, I have no idea what you brought. Like, I understood 10%. The way to do this, in my opinion, in general, the way to do a process like this, where you need to be sure something does happen, is to create a very comprehensive skill
Yeah.
and test it multiple times with doing evals on the skill itself, seeing if the output matches your criteria. Right, so you would create a skill that defines exactly the criteria which you have, and you would do a double, triple, even quadruple check. You could even create two skills, one chaining the other, one to create the handover and one to check that the handover contains everything. And basically, that's how you would structure a process in Claude. Whatever the process is, being that I have no idea about this very specific one you have mentioned.
Yeah, that's clear to me. Skills. They can also have self-learning skills. I haven't actually fallen down that rabbit hole yet, but if you could set a goal on a skill, you need to get this output. You work out what your skill needs to be. Um, that's also another way of doing it. We've hit 45 minutes, so I'm gonna. Any other questions before we finish? All right, cool. One sec.